Welcome everyone to our fifth Black Women in Media's Conference and Awards. We are with an amazing amount of panelists today. I'm just so excited to get some information from these ladies. This is the Publicist Panel. Now, you guys are behind the scenes doing all that work to get these people out there. A lot of people don't know what it takes to get public. Some people don't even know what it takes to get themselves into the media. Some people want to brand themselves. They don't know what to do. You guys are the ones working behind the scenes. Us as journalists, we work hand in hand with you guys. So I'm so excited to be moderating this panel with you beautiful ladies today. And I just kind of want you guys to all just introduce yourselves, a brief bio, maybe some work that you've done, some work that you're working on, just so we can get a gist of, your background, and then let's just jump right in. I want to start with Frances. How are you?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Frances Armand. I am the owner of Armand Consulting. It's a boutique PR agency where we focus on fashion, beauty, and bridal, as well as wellness. Some of my clients that some people probably heard of in the fashion world is Harlem's Fashion Row. I represent accessory designers Kiara and Tori Sedan, a jewelry line called Gwen Bellotti. Fashion is what I love. My background is really in business administration. I got a degree at HBCU, Clark Atlanta University. And after working in corporate America, I decided, I'm just going to pursue my love for the fashion industry and work behind the scenes. So that's what landed me in public relations. And I've been going strong for about 12 years now. So I love it. Awesome. Absolutely love it.
Awesome. Can we hear from Sean?
Sure. So my name is Sean Zanani. I am the owner of Exact Publicity, which is a public relations firm based here in Los Angeles and also in Chicago. Born and raised in Chicago, branched out to Los Angeles. It's been a little over 3 years now. We focus primarily on sports and entertainment PR. We also do a lot of damage control, integrated marketing, sponsorships, a lot of branded management and integrated management from that perspective. And as of lately, my latest projects have been really focused a lot on social injustice, a lot around racism. The climate of the world has kind of shifted a bit, the focus of what the clients have been coming to us for, but it's been an amazing experience thus far. So I'm a publicist. I'm also a TV producer, so I throw my hands in the film world in that sense, and I'm also an author. So I'm super glad to be here with you ladies and be on this panel.
Amazing, Sean. Amazing. Can we hear from Pam?
Hi. Yeah, thank you so much. I am so excited to be with you ladies. My name is Pam Perry, and I've been doing this for a couple of decades under Ministry Marketing Solutions. And I've had a few pivots over the years, since obviously 20 years. But my background before I even started my company was the director of Salvation Army. I was a PR director. And I really, really love working with Christian ministries. The problem with the Salvation Army, it was primarily white. And so I left the company after I got married, had a daughter, and I wanted to work with African-American Christian authors, speakers, preachers, and Ministry Marketing Solutions in 2000 was like, what is that? We don't need marketing. And eventually working with Black Christian authors, Black megachurches. Some of the clients I work with are Bishop T.D. Jakes, Creflo Dollar, Bill Winston, a lot of the mega churches across the country, helping them with their books and PR. And eventually a lot of people started making their own books, right? Self-publishing became a thing. Social media became a thing. At 60 years old, I had to pivot and really learn from being just a straight up publicist of putting stuff on facts to really like figuring out this whole content strategy in social media. And I then started publishing a magazine called Speakers Magazine.
Nice.
And we could talk about that pivot because it's a physical magazine as well as a digital magazine. And my clients are on the cover, and then other Black speakers are in it. So I've always worked with those that have positive messages that want to get out there. Nice. And that's the name of my podcast, Get Out There and Get Known.
Nice. Great. Sarita, can I hear from you?
Hey, everybody. I'm Sarita Oglesby. I am the principal of SJO Public Relations. I've been a publicist for I want to say I created my pivot around 2006. So I was at Foot Locker corporate headquarters based here in New York following my graduation from an HBCU as well, the Spelman College. And so I currently, and I have worked with in music, television, film and television, in addition to philanthropy and lifestyle. And I'm currently also in the beauty realm as well. So I am currently working on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative for a company streaming service called Philo, which is PHILO. In addition to working with David Banner, Raheem Devon, Tyrese, in addition to Stephen A. Smith with HBCU Week, and I'm currently also working with Jermaine Dupree on the Change Initiative, which is a song that he did, prior to the election, and now we're in post-election season with that.
Amazing. So we're this panel is full of information, knowledge, and that's what I kind of want to pull out of you guys this afternoon, just to share with our viewers the pivot. The theme for this year's conference is the pivot. Already in you guys' bio, I heard so many instances where you had to pivot in your careers. From Sean, where you're talking about now, you're seeing the climate of our world today, that the pivot has been a lot on social justice and racial injustice. Can you talk a little bit about that and how your content and your information and your clients have changed over this climate in the world right now?
Thank you so much. Such a good question, because it's been a complete 360 for me in how I've been running the company from the start of COVID till this moment. I think that the beginning of COVID, the shift was more so like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? With the majority of my clients being in the sports entertainment realm, and if you remember in the beginning, it was a little shift on payments with everything. So it's a little, and everyone was nervous. And so it became a question for me as to how am I gonna run this company? Am I gonna continue on with people who are saying, okay, we're having a hiccup in the budget, or do we continue and stop working, or do we continue and work anyway? And so I continued to work anyway. And it seemed to be that the climate of the world was focusing on what we're talking about, the racial component and the social injustice component. And so once I kind of put our focus there and focus on what are we going to do? What does this look like from the short-term, long-term perspective? How do we change the communication perspective to what's going on in the world? For some odd reason, it just kind of shifted from one client to another client, even to people who started to come to us. I think the world, when it comes to certain things that's going on, people are looking for maybe African-American PR companies or someone who can get the message out there. And I think that for all of us on this call, and for anyone out there that is, in a person of color in the PR world, if you do your job well, I think that for right now, we have a platform where we really can take it to another level and really get the voice of other people out there in a big way. Because for the first time, for me at least, I feel like the world is ready to hear what we have to say or to see what's going on. And people want to figure out a way to get that message out there. And it's been a personal journey for me too. And I've really enjoyed this shift. So it's the same thing, but it's a shift because it's part of my personality too. So it's a different kind of pitch, which you guys probably know what I'm talking about. And and so the satisfaction when you finish each project is a little bit more uplifting, I should say, than probably before.
Right. I can see that as probably the challenges, but I can definitely see that it was more fulfilling to be doing it in these climate and these times because the work is more meaningful. And like you said, we're in demand right now. So that's always a good thing, right? I want to talk to Pam a little bit about her pivot because I kind of heard it a little bit in your bio about the way you started and now the shift and having to learn how to brand and having to learn how to kind of take your creative juices and channel it into something else. And that's what all the pivot is about, right? So when the change comes, how can we move and how can we change? So let's talk about that a little bit. I know you said you have a magazine.
So the magazine actually started. So the speakers who have events, I promote them at events.
Nice.
COVID, no events. Okay, so the people who had the cover stories, that's what I do the PR for, they canceled their events. They were also canceling the whole coverage. So I had to pivot and figure out. So Cookie, we stayed with, that was February, but March, remember we had closed down. So Ed Gordon, a friend of mine and also a client, he has a book And so we did the book, the covers based on the authors and the speakers, not necessarily their events, because we would actually go to the events, do the social media at the events, promote the event. I mean, it was like it was event marketing, but there are no events.
Right.
So eventually we had to do the events where they're virtual events. So then we start promoting. So then at this point, this is probably like about July, where they're figuring out how to do the events online. Because before it was kind of like, oh, we'll just cancel it. But then around June, July, then we start doing the covers again with the coverage. We did Stephanie Mills. Obviously, we're promoting that she has a book. We did Kim Cole. She had an event in May. She was one of the first ones that had like an event. So we had to make that shift and change of how to promote the event, not just at it, but through the magazine, through the digital side. And that was a whole new thing, because a lot of the speakers were like, I don't know how to promote myself. I don't know what to do. And so we had to really make that shift of like, okay, this is how you're going to package yourself and then really get in the magazine. If you want to be a speaker, how to be a virtual speaker. So then they feel like they have to become television producers, kind of like what Sean was talking about. It's like, okay, now I need lights in camera. I just don't speak on stage anymore. Now I've got to do this thing. So it's been really a change with the speakers being scared, canceling events, doing virtual, and then really how to promote them and getting people there in the best way, and the equipment and all of that. So it's been interesting, but it's been good. It's been a good change.
That's great. Francis, what about you in the fashion world this year? You know, Fashion Week has been very different. You know, I'm used to going to Fashion Week in New York like every year for the past 4 years. So this year was just like, I didn't even know when things were happening. So how has this pivot affected you in doing PR in the fashion industry?
Well, we definitely had to think on our feet immediately. Well, my client, Harlem's Fashion Row, we produce shows every year, and in September and as well as February. So when the pandemic hit, we were already thinking, how can we help our clients, like those that we've been helping throughout the year, as far as if it was like an incubator program. So we hosted our first virtual event in May. And that was going to be our test run, pretty much, to see like what would be the turnout for that. Based on that, then we would have decided what September would look like. So it was very successful. And we saw that it wasn't only people from the United States that were attending, it was people outside of the United States. So that was a game changer for us, because, you know, New York Fashion Week is so exclusive.
Right.
It's invite only. If you're not a buyer or in press, you most likely would not get an invitation. So we saw this as an opportunity to reach out to consumers as well as editors outside of the US. So what we did, we just kind of pretty much shifted. We expanded our outreach, and it was very successful. I mean, we had write-ups in LUK, Vogue, I think it was Vogue Taiwan or China. I mean, we were just so amazed based on the outcome. So everything was digital. Everything was digital this year. And Hanifa, she was the first one to do like the 3D, runway. So we showed like it was possible. We can do this. It was just trying to see how other people do it, different models. But it was very successful. Fashion Week was very successful.
Listen, everybody here is killing it during the pandemic. I want to hear how has your pivot been? You know, how has it been for you this year with the pandemic? Give us an instance of a pivot where you had to say, this is where we were doing things then, but this is where we have to change and shift into now.
Yeah. So I have always embraced technology prior to this. I think I've always, we were using Zoom for 2.5 years prior to. So the transition was not very difficult for me. And my clients, thankfully, have always been people of conviction, who have always had a voice in social activism and justice, and use their platform for those really great messages to be put across, even though it wasn't highly popular. Black Lives Matter has always been something very important to the majority of my client base, which is wonderful. So the pivot for me personally, because the music industry was greatly impacted as a result of not being able able to tour means that you had to be very innovative. It had to be extremely creative. I think that it has forced the world to catch up, right, where we should have been technology-wise a long time ago. And so the infusion and intersection of those things and having to really create relationships and really like lean on each other's resources has been a strong pivot for my clients and I through this entire time frame, and also just making sure that we stay abreast and very much so in tune with what's next, right? It's like, how do you continue to push the envelope or transition differently? So I think that, you know, for me, it's just always been one of those things where I embrace things very early or adapt very early, and then try to make sure that I encourage other people to do so, and then also networking and really trying to create intersections in sports, also in fashion and other lifestyle industries to keep our clients alive, because it's not, you know, again, the main source of a lot of their money came from touring. And so when you don't have that, you know, now you got to figure out, do we do drive-in shows like Raheem Devon does drive-in concerts every other weekend, and you have other people who are using platforms such as Live Nation have now learned how to create at-home experiences which are now safe and encouraging that from that perspective, but also still creating revenue stream.
Right. That's important, because a lot of people have found it to where people are out of work. So how are they going to create a revenue stream for when they're out of work? I want to talk about the whole publicist or PR and the difference between. A lot of people get it confused, believe it or not. Some people don't even know the difference. Does somebody want to jump in and kind of give us a clear distinction of the difference? And if a person needs, if a person is trying to build their brand, who should they go to first, and what do they need first? Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so I guess well, PR is defined as it's a mix between journalism, psychology, and law, just so we're clear about what that is, right? And the whole faction of what public relations is the propelling of a brand, you know, in the space of being a conduit and making sure we tell our messaging and creating the storylines for that. A publicist is the person who practices PR. So I think that sometimes the notion of what PR has been convoluted because people think it's very glamorous. And though it appears that way, it's not as easy as it seems, because there's a lot of strategy in terms of our communication style and what we're looking to align with messaging. So I think when people do research on why they want to approach a publicist, they do need to have the basics of what marketing is first and foremost, right? Because before you have anything, you have to know what is your end goal overall. And that PR, though very powerful in that instance, is not the sole driver of any campaign. I think that we have, sometimes that gets lost in the thing, because this is a business, but you have to understand the entire scope of business before you get into what it is, because they'll lean so heavily on public relations to do everything, when we can do many of those things, but we're not the sole driver. It's like we're basically, it's four wheels on a car, and we're one of the wheels. So one of them falls off, obviously the cars can't function, but you still have to have the car as a structure to be able to do that, in my personal opinion.
Does anybody else?
I think that people sometimes get confused between doing personal branding,
right,
and having a publicist.
Yes.
So people will come to me and say, I need a publicist. I'm like, okay, all right.
You need a whole
I have a book. I want to get on The Tonight Show, or I want to get on Jimmy Fallon, you know, Jimmy Kimmel. And I'm like, but you're a speaker and a life coach. Yeah. How are you? What? So they have no clue. But what they're really saying is they want to be seen.
Right.
They want to be heard. They really want their ego stroked. So they say, oh, my publicist did that.
Right.
And so basically what I do is I teach them the strategy on how to be their own publicist, of how to pitch themselves. Mm-hmm. Pitch yourself to the media. And this is what you need. These are the materials that you need to pitch yourself. And that's not glamorous to them anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, you're not going to do it. Oh, well, we could do it. Yeah, it'll cost you a real pretty penny, but you're not going to really sell a whole lot of books in order to afford the publicist's duties, right? So a lot of people get confused between the personal branding and wanting to be seen and having a publicist. So I just really teach people how to be their own publicist. Initially, do the groundwork first. Then when you get big enough name, when I say when you get to be like an A-lister or a B-lister, right, you can hire a publicist. But until then, you really don't need a publicist, boo. You really don't. Not yet.
So, do you want to add to that, Sean?
No, I totally agree. I think it's a catch-22, because I personally think that everybody needs you need PR, no matter what it is, whatever the brand is, whatever the idea is, whatever the concept is. You have to find a way for people to know what it is that you're doing. The problem that comes about is that a lot of times people don't have the budget to literally pay for a publicist, to pay for our services. And what you're really paying for a good publicist, what you're paying for is that publicist contacts. You're paying for their connections. You want a publicist that they're so connected, they don't have to send a press release. You tell them the story, they have the concept. They're saying, hey, Sally Joe, let me tell you what I'm working on. I have a client that's doing X, Y, and Z, this place, this time, this reason, here's the vision, here's what we want to do, and then we figure out how we're going to do it. That comes with, as you guys know, experience and relationship building of years and years and years. I mean, I've been doing this 13 years. Everybody here has been doing this for years and years. So our contacts that's what you're paying for. And I think that sometimes people get sticker shock, if you will, when it gets to the point where they're like, what's your cost or what's your fees? And it's like, yeah, this is what it costs, but here's what you are going to get. And, so I think, to your point, it's great that you're able to teach people to say, here's what you can do, because you have to get started some way, somehow, and kind of get the snowball going to the point where you are able to get the budget, to get a strong publicity team behind you to kind of keep that wheel going further. So it's tough, because you do need it. You need PR, but you also need a budget for a good PR team. So it's like, kind of get going, and then hopefully be able to link with a good team that can kind of help you get to the next level and keep going up from there.
So Pam, you said that, so what would be a client that you would say you need to work on this for yourself before you can have a publicity team? So what would that
So if I'm working with an author and a speaker, one of the main things is their digital things have to be in order. Their digital things. So when I just do a Google on their name, what comes up? Is it a raggedy little website? Is it a social media that's real spotty? Do they have a podcast? Do they have a YouTube channel? Okay, if you're a speaker, well, why are you... I have people who don't know how to even put together their speaker reel. I mean, so there are like a lot of materials. And then, just a basic EPK, electronic press kit. They don't even know what to put in it. So do you have testimonials? It's so many things. It says, so I'm not the publicist that's going to wave what I call, like, I have this here, said, I'm not going to wave like the magic wand. It's like, ooh, put me on all the shows. It's like, there's some real work. There's some real journalism. We need some messaging here. We need some strategy. We need to figure out what your brand is. And it's like, I speak for everybody. I'm a motivational speaker. No, let's pull this back and let's do that. And so a lot of times I just tell people, we will coach you how to, like, maybe first get on podcasts.
Right.
Okay, let's do podcasts. Let's do a podcast tour. Let's do that. Let's do some digital magazines. Let's do that first. Let's do all of those things first. But what they happen to do more so is just really focus on ninja down on Instagram and Facebook, and they think that's their PR. And I said, well, you know what? You need to really get into other platforms on, like, real media.
Right.
Try your Black newspapers. There's African-American newspapers across the country. Have you ever been in your daily newspaper? Have you ever been on your local TV show? The problem is, it's like, no, I haven't. I don't know how to do that. And then I said, well, that's what I'll teach you how to do, how to pitch yourself, but your stuff has to be together. The website is really first.
Got you. So I want to kind of jump into mentorship right now, and just for young ladies that are watching, a lot of them want to be publicists. A lot of them that's the field that they want to go into, but some of them, they don't really know the roadmap. So if somebody can share, well, Francis, can you share kind of your roadmap of your start, and just some encouraging words for a young lady or man that wants to get into being a publicist, wants to start their company? I know that we need connections, we need all these things, but what was your roadmap, and what advice would you give to somebody that's coming up right now?
Don't look at your age, one, because I started late, because upon graduation, I was working for Turner Broadcasting in their accounting department. And I went and got my master's, but then after I got my master's, that's when I realized that I wanted to get into the fashion industry. And I'm in my 20s. Usually my friends now, they're in their career. I went and got an internship. I got an internship at one of the top 5 agencies here in New York City, and just started there. And, at first it was intimidating because those that were interning with me were much younger, but I was focused, and I was just like, I'm going to learn as much as I can learn and then take it from there. And I landed a job. So that was the start of my career. So I would definitely say for those that are looking to get into PR, don't try to do it the fast way. So many young people want to do it the fast way because, like Pam was saying, social media. Yes, social media is very important, but you have to learn the fundamentals. You have to learn the fundamentals. So I always say, try to find an agency to intern with. Speak to other publicists to see what their day in out, what it looks like, because it's not glamorous. I mean, of course, you're going to events, but you're working the events. So by the time the events are done, you're like, I don't want to see any more events for like a couple of months. So, try to get to know the industry that you want to be part in. And it might not even be public relations. It could be a social media manager, because sometimes they work hand in hand depending on what industry you work in. You have to learn for it from yourself to see if there's something that you really want to do, because there will be some sleepless nights. And I'm telling you, it's a lot of work. It's rewarding if this is something that you love. Like, I love it because I'm a people person. So I love to see when my clients are happy. You come up with a project and you're like, you see it from beginning to end, and then you see the results from it. It's very rewarding. So it is rewarding, and you are making a change, no matter, even if it's in fashion, because fashion is number one. It's a necessity. People need clothes, but sometimes people use clothes for therapy.
Right.
So you're putting information out there that people are going to look at. So you have to see it like, I'm helping someone. So it's very rewarding. So my number one advice is definitely get an internship. Speak to someone in the industry. If it's entertainment, if it's film, if it's working with talent, speak to them. Ask them, can I shadow you for a day? Or just take them out for coffee. That's how you build relationships. Relationships is key. And then also, you as a person, you want to be able to stay focused. People look at your social media, especially nowadays. Thank God back then, it was just getting started. So you going to
it wasn't even around for me.
When you go to party, make sure that you're not posting anything ratchet, because people look into that. I definitely do, because I want to make sure that the person I hire is on point. Because if I'm working events and there's high profile people, I want to make sure that you're focused. You're not worrying about, I need to take a picture with this person when something else needs to be done. So yeah, there's so much, but number one, internship, make sure your profile looks good, and then also speak to other people within the industry.
Great. Sarita, do you want to add to that? Just some young women coming up, they need the information. They want to know where to start. Talk a little bit about your start and, just some tips for them.
Sure. So, I got my start in trial and error. I was working in corporate America, and I was definitely miserable. And I had this degree in English, and I was moonlighting as a writer at the time for allhiphop.com and Honey Magazine, which is kind of dating me, but that's okay. And so I definitely built a lot of relationships with some very key editors that are still here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
It's kind of far back, the audio.
Okay, I'm not sure. Can you hear me now?
It was better. I think you switched your screen, so the other screen is a lot better. Yeah, but
okay. I'm gonna do that.
I remember Honey Magazine. I used to love that magazine.
Okay, better now. Sorry about that. My Wi-Fi is acting weird. Okay, so as I was saying, I moonlight as a writer for allhiphop.com and Honey Magazine, and I had an English degree. And so one of the things that I did know is that when you know how to write, you can be able to be trained to do anything else, right?
There
I think that's a very strong thing about learning how to pivot at a very young age was like taking what you had and figuring out how to maneuver and make a way out of no way, right? And so I will say this, one thing about being a publicist that a lot of people have lost the skill of writing. I think that is super important to be able to really hone your craft as a writer. And then also in addition to that, really researching what's going on in the landscape, understanding who the players are on the masthead and who controls what part of the book and what part of the segments. And then how do they have the influence that impact how you can determine and get placements. In addition to that, really networking across and above, right? Because I think that sometimes people just like, okay, I want to go straight to the top. So I want to get to know Yvette Shore, Yvette Gale, and all these, major players, but there are people right on your level that you need to be talking to as well, who are really making significant impacts and change and really taking this craft to the next level. So also look to the right and left sometimes, but then also making sure that you do stay focused, as what Francis said, looking at internship experiences. And then in addition to my PR experience, I actually had the opportunity to be the executive director of the WEAN program. So programs like WEAN and other organizations are out here really doing really great work to help people who want to be in our field and really make a difference, and really telling you what's the challenges of what it's like to be in these businesses and in these industries that appear very glamorous. Again, there's a lot of work that goes behind the scenes. And again, the more research that you do, the better you know how to strategize, the better you know how to understand the landscape. How do you create opportunities if you're working with an artist and they want to be in politics? How do you get involved with the Biden Harris team? How did you get involved with, local officials and things like that? And that creates more visibility for your client, which then was able to create more awareness for everything and creates new opportunities for them to make money, which is at the end of the day, the bottom line and the goal is to create revenue.
That's right. That's right. I love that. I was going to talk about the WEAN program a little bit. Yes. You were talking about not looking at an age, but they put an age a lot on that, because even with that, if you're over a certain age, you can't apply for that. You can't even get it.
Yeah, so this year was the first year we didn't have an age. And we had 50 people. Yeah, so this was also the biggest class that we've had in the WEAN history as well. So yes, in fact, and the reason why is because many times when you're working with a lot of corporations, they want to be able to assign college credit. So it makes it difficult when, you may have aged out, quote unquote, out of school, by 25, 26, it gets a little bit tricky. However, they still will accept you regardless of whether, or not. We have made an exception this year. So we were accepting candidates from ages 18 on up. Yeah.
Wow. I guess I was off the loop on that one, but okay.
It was a great program.
I know. I was like, I know when I found out about it, I had aged out already, and I was like, oh, I wish I would have been part of it. Just to have the training and the information is important. I'm a person that loves information. I love to know. So that's a great program for young women out there. I'm hoping that women in this industry could start creating other programs like that to bridge and to mentor young women that are coming up, because it's hard and everybody can't get a foot in the door. Some people like Francis was talking about, went to school for something else. So it's like now you pivot and now you don't have that way to pivot. I just want to ask Sean to talk a little bit about the publicity, the industry, and how you were able to navigate and possibly give some advice to someone that's kind of watching right now and some encouragement.
Sure. So I started off in news. I actually started off as a news reporter, and I spent 7 years in the business on that end before I switched over to PR. So I think that to your point about writing, I agree. It's if you're able to focus on the writing component of the PR business, I think you can mix and mingle that in so many different ways. So when I'm writing or I'm thinking of what's going on for the client, I'm thinking as the journalist when I was in the newsroom. So I'm thinking, would I have covered this story? Why would I have covered this story? Would my news director chew me out if I were to pitch this story in the morning meeting? And if so, why? And so when you come from that perspective after working in the newsroom and the adrenaline of, the hustle and bustle that goes on in the newsroom, and you switch over to PR, you kind of bring a different dynamic to the business and to what you're doing. So I think to your point, the writing aspect, if you can write and remember that the passion of why you're doing this and understand that this is really what you want to do. I think interning is great. In fact, my last 3 assistants were all interns of mine first before they got bumped up to being an assistant of mine. My last 2 assistants now have their own PR firms, both in Chicago. And so, that to me means a lot, because it's like, okay, when I get someone in my head and they're good and they're working under me, I know, okay, I usually have about 2 to 3 years, truthfully. And I know before they're probably going to go on their own, but that's what I want. I want them to, that's what you want.
Right.
So I think finding someone or finding the PR person, finding the firm where you can grow under, learn as much as you can. And then if that's for you, possibly go on and doing your own thing. I've also had people intern for me who said, this is not what I want to do. I don't want to do entertainment. I want to do corporate PR. Is this a difference? We know it's a difference, corporate PR than 9 to 5 and, you know, sports entertainment, where it can be we're working nonstop all weekend and nights. And, you know, it's a different dynamic that it's not, you know, it's not for everyone, that you don't know until you get your foot in the door and actually start working. And to that point, my current assistant here in LA, she probably emailed me 4 or 5 different times and kept calling and calling to say, can I please work for you? Can I please work underneath you? Can I please? Until I finally said yes. And she's been a dream. And so that persistence of when you do that and you let someone in, because we all know what that means. You got to open up the door to somebody else. Mm-hmm. So letting them in and finding that person, I try to give someone a yes. If I feel it in my spirit, I'm spiritually led, I bring them in and you're part of the family, and I pour myself into you until I feel like, you know, you obviously go on and do what you need to do. I think another point is to have resilience. I mean, God, I've had to pivot so many times. It's insane to the amount of times that I've had to pivot. So it was starting off as reporting and then switching over to starting this company. I still dibble into hosting. Now I'm producing. You know, it's like all these different things you do. So it's being okay with being okay with being okay with the pivot, and knowing that you're okay with constantly pivoting. Mm-hmm. So if the passion, if the bottom line is, let's say, writing, and we know that's the bottom line, then yes, you're doing PR, but there's some other dynamics that may come along with that, and be okay with flowing in those dynamics. Mm-hmm. That's my advice, is just be okay to flow with the flow.
I love that. We are multifaceted beings. We are able to do more than one thing at one time. So I'm just so happy that you ladies were able to just pour everything out of you. As far as your careers, a lot of people, well, I got a lot from it. And I know a lot of people watching have gotten a lot of information from you ladies. Is there any last thing that you kind of want to give out before we close out?
I want to say something really quick. A lot of people will inbox me or email me and say, oh, I'd like you to mentor me, whatever. And that will be like, okay, well, I'd like to give you an assignment. This is what you do. And then I don't hear from them. And so it kind of knows like they're not serious. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people say, well, can you mentor me? And I'll give you some work. I'll just so that you can prove yourself. And then they go away, because it's like, well, what do you want? You say you want me to mentor you. So I'm going to say, oh yeah, well, here are my contacts. Take everything that I know, and I'm gonna pour it all into you for no reason. It's like, okay, you've got to put in some sweat equity. Okay, that's really like one of the main things. But I did start a program, and it's called ReadySetGoSpeak.com, and it's like a mentoring program, and it's also like a training program, and also kind of like a mastermind. But it's for anyone who wants to learn the industry. And the main thing people say is, well, I don't know how to meet the media. So I have them in this community where they can meet my media friends, and they can actually pitch them, talk to them, become friends with them, whatever they want in the program. And so all they have to do is join the program, do the work, show up. I'm there. If they want to ask questions, that's the only way that I can contain it. So when I tell people, I say, go to ReadySetGoSpeak.com. This is what you do. Those that are serious will do it. Those that won't will go away, because no one's just going to open up their whole Rolodex or all their contacts and pour into you for no reason. You have to. I have mentors that I actually still to this day, I help them. I whatever they ask me to do, I'm going to be there for them. That's what you do in a mentoring relationship. You've got to give first. So that's what I have.
I love that. Sarita, you want to ask?
Yes, I just want to encourage people to chase your dreams and not your competition. Mm-hmm. I think that sometimes, you know, we get a little distracted by that, right? It's like running a track race. And so it's great to be in collaboration and work, whatever, but just know that you're on your own journey, your own path, and that nothing that's meant for you will pass you.
I love that. Any last words, Francis?
Have faith. I think faith, my faith in God was definitely my backbone in this industry. It's not always flowers. I would always advise like my mentees, you know, yes, everyone's different. Not everyone's going to treat you the same, but you always have to remember why you're doing this. If this is something that you love, some people will applaud you. Some people will criticize you. Some people will say some really mean things, but you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in yourself. And that's for any industry. You have to believe in yourself and know that you're worth it.
Okay. Sean, anything?
I think I would just say figure out your passion. And once you find what is driving you, have literally tunnel vision on just that. So that may mean Xing out friends. That may mean Xing out family. It may be Xing out a spouse for a moment. It may be, whatever you need to do to dive in on, to whatever that craft may be, that press release, the vision of whatever your dream may be, go for it. Because if you don't go for it for yourself, it won't happen. You have to believe in yourself in order to do anything. And at the end of the day, that's what we're here for, is to keep moving. So you have to have that belief in yourself. I also want to mention, I'm doing a series of classes personally on the power of the pivot, kind of what we're talking about here. Just because I have had so many people really off of Instagram that DM me to say, hey, looking for PR services, so forth and so on. I get on a call with them and they do need the PR, like what we're talking about, but they're not at the point where they have the budget for a publicist. And so what I've decided to do in this next month of COVID here is to focus on some pointers that I can give to people, just to kind of get going, some basics of what they can do to kind of get going on their own for some PR if they're not quite ready for a publicist, but we all know they need some publicity. So if that's the case, and if that's someone that's out there that's listening, please feel free to go to my company website, exactpublicity.com, or to, DM me on Instagram, which is Publicist Sean. But at the end of the day, I just personally would like to be able to just offer some words of wisdom to people and know that, I'm a resource. I'm not the one that says, hey, don't contact me. I always reach out to people. I always respond back. And to me, that's what it's all about. We got to give back.
Thank you so much, ladies, for the gems. This was an amazing panel. All these publicists killing it. This is the Publicist Panel, Black Women in Media, 5th Conference and Award Show. Stay locked right here for more. Bye.
Bye.
So amazing.